Last speaker, it's been a long day. It's been a long, long day. So I know what you're thinking. I hope this guy's not crap. I promise you I won't be. I've got some really good news. I've been drinking lots of water. So as much as the fact that I stand between us and alcohol, you stand between me and getting to the bathroom. So I promise that I'll get on with it. You know, I've been in selling for about 30 years. In the last 2 years, I've had the privilege of working with a lot of different organisations. A thing I really enjoyed today was some of the case studies. I was actually in Silicon Valley earlier this year with a software company that builds medical practice software, and they pushed into a new vertical. So away from general practices and surgeries, they pushed into the dental vertical. And they recognised that often the best thing for salespeople is to have a customer speaker come in and talk about what problem that customer had, why they actually bought from them as an organisation, because that helps the salespeople go out into the market and tell great, true stories. It's one of the keys to selling, and we've got to equip people to tell great, true stories. And I know it doesn't look it, but I actually get very nervous when I speak. And this customer speaker that came in for this conference, their customer speaker, was really a dentist who'd franchised a number of operations, and he'd sort of fallen into being a business person even though he was really a dentist. He had 7 different franchises that he ran or operations, and he got up to speak and was really nervous, and he said, look, I don't normally speak in front of big crowds, and it would really help me, because I'm just so nervous, if you could all lean back in your chairs and look up at the ceiling for me. At which point one of the UK sales guys yelled out, I guess we should be lucky you're not a proctologist. That's not really a true story. So I've travelled through time, I guess, and space. I've sold in the USA, in Asia, Australia, over a 30-year period. And I just want to reinforce some of the great points that were made today. I think the most important thing, the thing that's needed most in professional selling today, is great coaches. When I first got into professional selling, I got into the radio paging industry in its infancy. There were beepers at the time, and alphanumeric paging was just coming out. It was my first sales job. The company took a real gamble in hiring me. I had no real sales background, but I had such an incredible sales manager who went with me and taught me to sell. And I had a great work ethic, and I learnt fast, and I became the #1 person ever in the industry. Sold to IBM at 70% higher prices than what they were paying Telstra, and more than 25 years later, IBM is still a customer of this organisation. So the lifetime value of a customer is just awesome. You know, I've lost deals, and I went from selling to sales management, and the last 12 years of my life before I left the corporate world 2 years ago, I was running software companies. I remember taking over one company, and we were busy losing deals all the time. And again, just to reinforce another point today, the importance of loss reviews. Now, I've come to believe that win reviews are infinitely more important than loss reviews. But at the time, I was at least smart enough to know, go find out while we're losing. And we were losing most of the deals in this particular market. And within 5 months, we turned that around. Now, these were deals with, typically with 9-month sales cycles, multi-million-dollar deals. But we turned that around. And we had 30 people in our office in the Australian operation out of a worldwide employee force of 1,800, and yet we did 3 of the 4 biggest contracts in the world, just getting some basic things right about methodology. Well, actually, what's more important than methodology is actually execution, which is what we're going to talk about today, and why coaching is so important. So we've had stats coming out of our ears today. I'm just going to give you 3 more, but I want to ask you some questions. Every salesperson we hire, we would expect that they can differentiate. Every salesperson, I think, if you put your finger in their chest and said, do you differentiate for your employer when you go and sell? Not only would they say yes, they would say yes, and I know that's one of the most important things that I'm paid to do. And we know that there's some real trends and problems in selling. I see it all around the world. There's an increase of consensus-based buying. There's an increasing level of distrust about return on investment claims. Sales cycles are taking longer. Buyers are more risk averse. So we need people to differentiate well. What percentage of people do you think differentiate? It's a core thing they're paid to do. What percentage? The number will terrify you. 10%. It's 14%. 86% of people fail. Really scary number, and yet that's one of the core things that they're paid to do. What percentage of sales engagements fail to meet customer expectations? It's a really similar number. 85% fail to meet customer expectations. It's Forrester research. And we heard this today from Jason. I absolutely encourage you to buy and read this book. It will change your life as a sales manager. There's only been a handful of books ever written about sales management. There are hundreds and hundreds of books about selling, almost nothing on sales management. This book is unbelievable. I was speaking in the USA earlier this year when someone said to me, you've got to get and read this book. And I had 3 other people within a 7-week period tell me the same thing. Really encourage you to get hold of that book. Jason said today what that number was. What's the number? What percentage of Salesforce metrics cannot be managed? Do you remember the number? Pretty close, 83% can't be managed. Only 17% of what we're measuring in organisations can we pull a lever and actually do something about. So how do these numbers come together? 17% of metrics can be managed, only 15% of the time are we meeting expectations, only 14% of the time we're differentiating. What is it we can do? What's the confluence of those numbers? What's something we can do to solve that problem? One of the big things I see in selling, huge problem for salespeople, is they don't understand that in selling we get delegated down to the people that we sound like. So as a sales manager, we're busy doing the dumb thing that Jason said today, which is trying to manage by outcomes instead of managing by inputs and managing by helping change and shape behaviours. But we'll tell people, go sell higher. Go and sell at the C level. Go and get meetings with senior people. And then we leave it at that. And the poor salesperson is thinking, well, I might be able to get the appointment, but what the hell is the conversation going to be about? What am I going to turn up and talk about that gives me that level of engagement? Most of them are smart enough to know certain questions they need to ask, but how do they earn the right to ask those questions? And to me, it all comes together with this. We need to drive the right conversations at the right level. And that's where we need to focus our coaching. We need to help people have the right conversations at the right level. Most people in professional selling, and I've been guilty of it myself, are busy selling to the wrong people in the organisation. And worse than that, they're having the wrong conversations. I came down here a couple of days early to have dinner with Jason. I've been a huge fan. I contacted him and said, I want to buy you dinner and have a meal. I'm a huge fan. So I came down on Tuesday night to do that. But yesterday I spent some time with a couple of my clients in Melbourne doing some coaching, and I spent an hour and a half with one of their best salespeople as far as results go. But what a crazy conversation I was having with this person. She's having the wrong conversations at the wrong level inside her prospect organisations with customers and prospects. She keeps tumbling down talking about what their company does and what their technology is. The reality is people don't care about what we do until they understand what we can do for them. We need to lead with why. Why is meeting me important? Why is this conversation important? Why is it that the thing we can offer is something that you should actually invest some time in looking at? We need to learn to lead with why. We need to change the conversations, the right conversations at the right level. And those conversations will be different by person. The other thing in my mind that's incredibly important is we need to get good at defining 4 words in selling. And we need to help salespeople own these definitions themselves. Not only buyers, but our own salespeople, this statement's true of. People are best motivated for reasons that they themselves discover. And Jason did that from the platform here this morning. Remember, he actually talked about have a conversation with the salesperson where they identify what it is that they need to do to help hit their number, how many appointments they think they need to go and do with what kind of person, how many phone calls they're going to need to make to get those appointments. Help people come to their own conclusion about why something is important. So we need to help our salespeople understand what a benefit is. Neil Rackham's been mentioned. You know, huge figure in professional selling, and spin selling is still relevant today, highly relevant. But Neil taught me that a benefit is only a benefit if it solves a specific acknowledged problem that the customer says they have. So there is no benefits to talk about unless we understand what their specific problems are that they say are a priority for them. We need to define value well. We need to understand that only the customer is qualified to call something a solution, and only the customer is qualified to define value. So we need to know, how do they define value? How do they define benefit? And we also need to be really good at building trust. And LinkedIn plays an important part. I have pretty strong views on social selling. I agree with everything that Matt actually talked about today. I'm an avid fan of LinkedIn and I use it actively. But I think that we need to understand that tools like LinkedIn and Twitter give salespeople the ability to now market, and we should, but we need to avoid narcissism and just spamming people. The real power in business-to-business selling for social is our ability to research people and connect and network. You know, one of the dangerous myths I've heard when I was in the States just a couple of weeks ago was I heard a couple of people at a workshop we were running talking about this notion that social now means that people don't have to cold call. Social means business is going to come to us. If we use social well, the leads are going to come to us. And that is a crazy thing to think. Every business-to-business salesperson on the face of the planet needs to personally own the generation of their pipeline and the progression of that pipeline. And social can help them do it. But getting leads is a bonus, right? So social is a way to have warm introductions to research, but also to understand that people buy from people and they'll buy you before they buy what it is that your company is offering. And that's where people get their LinkedIn profile wrong. They don't understand that it's not an online CV, it's their online brochure about the value that they can offer specific clients. Really important to specialize. So let's actually talk about two things here. One is trust, and the other thing is what defines being strategic. Because I help organisations hire salespeople, and I'll often ask the potential salesperson, do you regard yourself as strategic in how you sell? People typically say yes, and then I say, great, if I followed you around for a week, what is it that I would see you doing that would show me that you are strategic? And I almost never get a good answer to that question. But let's look at trust. Trust is really important. People buy from those they like and trust. People buy from those they like and trust. So how do you build trust? So this is a little formula for this, and I just want to go through this formula to illustrate the problem with the way a lot of people are currently selling today. So this formula is, trust is built on understanding and shared values. I'm comfortable buying from someone that I think truly understands me and what I need, and where we have shared values. That's one of the great things about cloud computing, things like Salesforce.com and LinkedIn, is you only buy things as you deploy and get the value. It's actually a business model of shared values. The old software model, I used to work at SAP years ago, but you know, where you'd sell an enterprise some $40 million enterprise license for the software, and 7 years later, 85% of that software is still sitting on the shelf. You know, that's not a business model of shared values. So beyond just the business model, people need to know what are your personal values. And to me, that's really important with something like LinkedIn. If you get an appointment with a professional buyer, you need to believe that they're going to go and check you out on LinkedIn. They're going to have a look at you. And what they need to read needs to reinforce why they want to meet with you, not cause them to want to bump the meeting or cancel the meeting. So think about, you know, projecting your values, that you're all about the customer, you're all about customer success on places like LinkedIn. And the other half of that formula is capability plus reputation. And I think if you've got genuine understanding of your customer and they believe you do, and they see that you have shared values, you're all about successful outcome, and then they see that you're capable and have a great reputation, you're able to deliver for them, then I think you've got the trust box ticked. But the problem with that formula is, where do you think most salespeople have the conversation in that formula? What do they focus on in their conversations? At the back end, they focus on capability and reputation. Let me tell you all about me and us and what we do and what the analysts think of us. And remember, people don't care about what it is that we're offering until they understand that it's important. We need to lead with why. What's the best way to build trust in a sales call? Best way to build trust, obviously do your research and prepare and plan, you know, earn the right to be there, have insight. But the best thing is listening, truly, truly, truly listening. I just want to play you a little funny video. It's been a long day. This is from Big Bang Theory, but here's a great example of how to actively listen to somebody and the difference it makes.
First there was PlayStation, aka PS1. Then there's PS2, PS3, and now PS4. And that makes sense. You'd think after Xbox, there'd be Xbox 2. But no. Next came Xbox 360. And now, after 360, comes Xbox One. Why one? Maybe that's how many seconds of thought they put into naming it.
Can you get the butter, please?
You know, however, with the Xbox One, I can control my entire entertainment system using voice commands. Up until now, I've had to use Leonard.
Then get the other one. Pass the butter.
Hang on. I don't feel like you're taking this dilemma seriously.
Fine, Sheldon. You have my undivided attention.
Okay, now, the PS4 is more angular and sleek looking.
No way!
It's true. But the larger size of the Xbox One may keep it from overheating.
You wouldn't want your gaming system to overheat?
No, see, well, you absolutely would not. And furthermore, the Xbox One now comes with a Kinect included.
Included?
Yes. Not sold separately. Although the PS4 uses cool new GDDR5 RAM, while the Xbox One is still using the conventional DDR3 memory.
Why would they still be using DDR3? Are they nuts?
See, that's what I thought. But then they go and throw in an ES RAM buffer.
Oh, wait a second. Who's they?
The Xbox.
You're kidding!
No, I am not. And this ES RAM buffer should totally bridge the 100 gigabit per second bandwidth gap between the two RAM types.
This is a nightmare. How will you ever make a decision?
See, I don't know. What should I do?
Please pass the butter!
The power of listening. You know, the thing is, I say sales managers should spend more time coaching, and I absolutely agree with what Jason said today. Coaching's got to be codified. People need to understand what's expected when it goes on. And the number one challenge for sales managers when they go and coach is to shut up, is to actually let the person fail and not keep rescuing people, not getting in there and doing their job, but to allow the process to happen. You know, the first year I spoke at the CSE event and delivered a keynote, it was on the evolution of professional selling, and I put this slide up. The second year I delivered a keynote, it was about, you know, is sales management the weak link in the revenue chain? Last year I emceed, but I just want to revisit this slide just for a couple of minutes. The reality is that bottom left-hand quadrant, transactional selling, where it's low margin, low value, both in the mind of the customer and, you know, shrinking margins for the seller, it just does not fund a field salesperson. And if I updated that quadrant to make it real today, that bottom left-hand quadrant is actually much bigger, and the other three quadrants are smaller. One of the big mistakes that we make as sellers is we allow our expensive field solution sales force to go out there and transact commodities. The outcome of this is they've got these incredibly high quotas and they feel like they're busy fool. There's not enough hours in the day to do the deals. We've got to be brave enough to take that business away from them, force them to value. But what we need to do is this concept of trusted advisor. That the Challenger Selling book came out, and that term's been popular for a while. I think it's a bit of a fad, right? But we need to become trusted advisors of our customer. We need to define what being strategic means, and actually did that at the conference. But if we're going to coach, the way we know what quadrant our salespeople are operating in really comes down to the type of conversations that they're having. Because let me tell you something. If we are selling up in the organisation, if we're selling to that C level, we're selling to real decision makers, I guarantee you I know what they care about. I've run companies, I know what I care about. What they care about is results, outcomes, and managing risk. How can you help me deliver outcomes that I want and in a way that manages my risk? So if the salesperson's talking about delivering outcomes and managing risk, then they're having the right conversation at the right level. If they're having that conversation and the person doesn't get it, it means they're selling too low in the organisation. So let's define what being strategic means. And I'm actually a big believer of getting alignment with buyers rather than trying to convert people. My view is that there's not a shortage of market, there's not a shortage of prospects, there's a shortage of hours in the day for people to be effective in going out there and executing. So we need to find alignment. And you know, you've probably seen derivations of this kind of illustration. I'm happy to make this available if anybody emails me. But you know, those top three lines there are really, in essence, the buyer's journey. What is it that people go through when they buy? And if we get engaged late in the process, on the bottom there, under the heading of tactical, that's what happens to us as sellers. We're under, you know, huge time pressures. We have to comply with their process. There seems like there's a strong focus on price. Conversations are about features and functions, and it's very bottom up, and we get blocked. We find it tough to go and get and engage with power. And what being strategic means in my mind, if you actually defined it, it's research, target and plan. That's where social is so powerful. Social selling to me is not about social narcissism and projecting messages out there, it's about social listening. And the value of win reviews is it tells us to go and what to listen for. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. But they're really the things. You can read those words on the left-hand side there. But what we need to do is research, target organisations. It's very important who we target and the entry point within that organisation. We get one chance to decide where we're going to enter an account. If we enter too low, we're going to probably get blocked. If we back someone that's got a losing political agenda, because every organisation's political, we're going to be in trouble in that account. So the research and targeting is very important, and then we need to turn up with some level of insight. We don't want to turn up insulting people. We mustn't make the mistake of thinking that data and research is insight, because usually it's not. It's just noise and confusion. And we need to understand how does the customer define value instead of projecting a value proposition. And you'll notice those four things aren't neatly lined up under those four bigger arrows above them, because all of those things need to be compressed and consolidated up front. Then if they have to come to market with a formal process, we will be differentiated rather than scrambling to do that. But here's the thing in my mind. There's something huge that's missing in that illustration. That illustration on its own is wrong. To execute a sales business plan with that is wrong. Can you see why? There's something magic in professional selling. If we stop thinking about ourselves, that's the first step. Stop thinking about what we do and projecting onto people what we think we can do. Stop doing that. Start getting in the world of our customer. But there's a magic thing we can do. Think about our customer's customer. What are the outcomes my customer is trying to achieve? Not just what will this solution or technology or product or service do for them at a business case level, how does it help them address the challenges in their market? Incredibly important for them. And what we need to do, strategic selling actually goes beyond the thing of buying to implementation. Thinking about, again, what's the outcome that needs to be delivered, why is it important, who's impacted, how does this help them with their customer's customer, and that gets us aligned with them. Think about B to B to C, business to their customer, really important. And those two red arrows there, we've all heard the statistics, depending on who you believe, 56% or 70%, through the customer's journey is when they engage the seller. Being strategic, being proactive means engage early. Do your research, engage early. And if you engage early, you can shape the requirements, you can shape the business case. We can create the funding rather than be a victim of what's going on inside the organisation. Little thing I want to talk about in this is the concept of win reviews. We heard great information today about loss reviews, and I know the guys Keen also does win reviews as well. But here's a piece of magic that I've learned in working with clients. Don't do win reviews just to find out why they bought from us over the competition. That's an obvious thing that we're hungry to know. Yeah? We want to know, why did we win or lose against the competition? And when I took over that company where we won 3 of the 4 biggest deals in the world, I turned things around. I did it through loss reviews. I went and found out why were we getting our ass kicked in the market and figured out how to turn my competitors' value prop into landmines for them to go and stand on when they sold. So that was fun. I improved the competitive win-loss ratio. But here's the thing. You want to go and find out not what they bought from you competitively, why did they go to market in the first place? What was going on inside their organisation that caused this problem to really bubble up to the top? To get on the radar of the CEO, to cause them to think we need to invest money to solve this problem. Because what that does, there's a concept of trigger events. Craig Elias is actually a good friend of mine out of the States. So as well as Joe's book, Cracking the Sales Management Code, I'd recommend this book, Shift. He talks a lot about win reviews. Find out what are the trigger events that cause people to buy the things we sell, and then use things like social to listen so we can go engage early. Use social to listen so we can go and engage early. And there's obvious things. If a company hires a particular role, then they're going to want change. If someone complains about your competition, that's an obvious trigger event. But really think about those things as you go to market. Last little case study I just want to introduce is, that's just a screenshot of my website. On the right-hand side, there's my blog, and the 4th item down there is how to create a compelling pitch. I'd really encourage you, if you like what you're about to hear, just go to my website and have a look at it. There's links to videos and other thought leaders around the world. But that little screenshot on the right is Teresa Lena Stevens, a good friend of mine out of San Francisco, works for Stanford University. I regard her as the best person in the world in how to create a pitch. She doesn't like the term pitch, actually. People don't like things thrown at them. The idea is to hook people and reel them in. But what she talks about is how important it is to lead with why. Not with what and how, but to lead with why. And the real why is why it's important. So I just want to finish with a little case study. The real name of my client I did this work with is not Pharmco or Pharmaco. But what they do is they provide software and staff and methodologies and procurement services to help local chemists, so pharmacists that are in strip mall shopping centres compete. So they'll help them get better customer loyalty, aggregate their buying. It's kind of like a co-op. They'll merchandise for them. They'll make the shop look better. They'll train their staff. They do all of these things. And what they were doing is their reps would walk in to a chemist or a pharmacy and they would try and get the attention. And normally the guy's not out with customers. Where's he normally standing? In the back of the shop, up on his plinth, filling scripts. And they're trying to get the person's attention. The pharmaceutical industry's dealt with this for a long time. You know, they get a 7-minute window to try and meet with a doctor and try and get some cut through. And they would start to talk about all of the things they do. Let me tell you about Pharmaco and what we do. We do customer loyalty programs. We do this, we do that. How do you think those conversations would go? We all know incredibly badly. The person's distracted, they're busy. The more you talk, the more confused they get. So we actually applied this framework. We applied this whole framework of going from who we are, what we do and how we do it, to a provocative insight, why it's important, what they should do about it and how we can help. And we came up with something really simple. And this is, you know, I do a lot of things for companies, but one of the things I love doing is helping companies sort their messaging out. How can you have better conversations at the right level with people in your marketplace? How can you hook people and get them interested in the business value you offer? Because then they'll want to know about how you do things. And we made it really simple. They walk into chemist shops now and they would go and see the pharmacist who typically owns the business at the back of the store, and they would say that the super pharmacy retailers out of the USA are doing to chemists like yours exactly what Coles and Woolies have done to the local butcher. 4 out of 10 of chemists will be out of business within 6 years, according to some of the research. But it doesn't have to be that way. Our organisation can help make sure that you're one of the few that actually prospers. What I need is 1 hour of your time to come back and sit down with you and explore which of the things that we do would give you the most return on investment and benefit. When's a good time to do that? Completely different conversation, completely transform the way that they sell. So what I'd just really like to leave you with is really think about, lead with why, not what and how. Coaching is incredibly important. And learn to coach people really well. Let them fail and understand that the way we sell is more important than what we sell. That's the thing we've got to focus on inside organisations. Thank you.